and kind of put myself in that box as well. And it took a while, and it took my move to Stowe actually for me to really push out of that and say, no, actually, it doesn't matter that I've got small children. You know, I am a professional. I've been doing this a really long time. I am more than capable of somebody that works, because I work 4 days at the moment, but I'm more than capable of doing all the things that somebody else does if they're working full time.
Hello and welcome to The Law According To. This is the podcast where I talk to law professionals about their journey in their career to date. And today I'm pleased to be joined by Liza Gatrell of Stowe Family Law. Liza graduated from Cardiff University and has been a family law solicitor since qualifying in 2008. She joined Stowe Family Law 18 months ago and has recently been promoted to partner. Liza's specialities are international and UK surrogacy, co-parenting agreements and donor conception. Liza, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me, Mike.
You're very welcome, and congratulations on your recent promotion.
Thank you.
So let's talk about your career, and we'll start at the very beginning. So why was it you chose law as a career?
So I would say I fell into it a little bit. So I was the first year, so going back to AS levels, when they introduced the AS levels. So I was the first year where it went from you having to pick 3 A levels to suddenly you had to pick 4 or 5 AS levels and then A levels. So I had kind of the 3 core A levels that I wanted to do, but I was told that I had to do at least 4, and kind of had the college prospectus and just was reading some of the information about the different courses and just decided that I'd do law for a year because it looked a bit interesting. I think my dad would say I'm quite good at arguing. And so I took it from there really. And funnily enough, I was much better at that course than I was the other A levels that I'd taken. And I ended up dropping the biology A level that I was doing because I had at the time, I had ideas of becoming a marine biologist or something along those lines. So I dropped the biology A level. I kept on with the law A level. Completed that, and then when I was looking to go to universities, I still wasn't 100% sure what I wanted to do with my life, but I enjoyed doing the law A level, and I thought, well, if I do a law degree, it's quite a sturdy degree, it will set me up for lots of different things, but I don't know if I necessarily back then thought I'd end up as a lawyer.
Okay, so it's just kind of giving yourself options and seeing where it went from there.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you then graduated, what was it that made you take that step to kind of doing your LPC and going on to become a lawyer?
Yeah, so I did a law and criminology degree, and I really enjoyed the criminology aspect. And again, I had ideas that I was going to be a criminal solicitor. Obviously, that didn't happen, and I just really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. I decided that this was something that I wanted to do. So the next step was the LPC. I mean, there's lots of different routes now to qualifying, but we are going back to sort of 2005, 2006. So I stayed at Cardiff and I did my LPC there, completed that, and then again the next step then was to find a training contract somewhere. But we were now in 2006, 2007, so the banking crisis.
Absolutely.
The job market dried up. It wasn't possible to get training contracts at the time, so I managed to get a job as a paralegal. At the time, I hadn't enjoyed family law, actually, when I'd done it on my degree. I hadn't particularly enjoyed it when I'd done it on my LPC. So again, I was looking to do something else. I had ideas of criminal law or private client, something along those lines. But the only job I could get at the time was as a paralegal in a family law department. So I took it because I didn't have a huge number of options at that time. And I thought, well, at least it'll give me a bit of experience. It'll get my foot in the door, and I'll see what happens. And yeah, really loved it. So I worked as a paralegal for 6 months and then they offered me a training contract.
Oh, excellent. And what was it you particularly loved about family law?
So I think I like that I get to meet lots of people. I get to meet lots of people. I get to hear their stories. Whilst, with any area of law, there's huge amounts of paperwork, undoubtedly. Yeah. But what I really like is that I have a lot of practical aspects of my job as well. So I'm not just sort of sat at my desk all the time doing the paperwork. I can meet clients, I can go out to court, and it feels like, maybe not all the time, but it feels like you're helping people. So rather than kind of negotiating between companies, etc., and working with other professionals, it feels like you're making a bit of a difference in people's lives. They may not always appreciate that because they don't necessarily want to be going through what they're going through. But I think from an aspect of job satisfaction, it's nice to feel like you're making a small difference for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I imagine you probably are often meeting people in very difficult circumstances, and maybe even possibly the worst experience of their life, and obviously you're helping them through that situation. So rather than, obviously some aspects of law is very transactional, isn't it? Whereas yours is very very kind of human related, as it were.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there was a judge when I was working in Cardiff. There was a judge there, and whenever a case came before him, particularly a divorce case, he kind of had a little spiel, because they all have their spiels usually that they give out to parties in these types of circumstances. And his was always that there are three life events that, if you go through them, are the most stressful things that you will go through, and that's divorce, selling a property, and death. And he was like, and you're going to be good, probably most likely doing 2 of those right now, within the next 12 to 18 months. So that's, it just goes to show it's a huge amount, it's a huge amount of upheaval.
Absolutely. Yeah, horrendous. Okay, so with that obviously comes a lot of challenges, and throughout your career I imagine you faced some challenges. What would you say were the kind of biggest challenges that you've faced?
Do you mean me personally, or in relation to clients and cases?
With regards to your career, and whether it be personally or whether it be in particular cases.
I suppose being a female lawyer and a mother, I definitely had some challenges. Particularly after I'd had my first child, I went back to work part-time. And I worked for a firm, actually. I think I was quite lucky in a lot of respects that I worked for a firm that adopted flexibility much earlier than most of the law profession. I mean, we're getting a lot better, but they did do well with the flexibility quite early on. But there was definitely a degree of stunted development as a result. You kind of were put in a box, that you only work part-time, etc. And therefore maybe, you can't run an office, or you can't run a team, or you can't do X, Y, and Z because you're not full-time, if you like. So I think that was something that I had to, I think personally, perhaps I believed it as well for a little while, and kind of put myself in that box as well. And it took a while, and it took my move to Stowe actually for me to really push out of that and say, no, actually, it doesn't matter that I've got small children that I'm looking at. I am a professional. I've been doing this a really long time. I am more than capable of somebody that works, because I work 4 days at the moment, but I'm more than capable of doing all the things that somebody else does if they're working full time.
Yeah, it does. There's not necessarily just in law, but it does appear to be that there's that situations that you have to have almost like a choice of family or career. Just because you have a family doesn't mean to say you've suddenly lost your ambition. And it's obviously great that you found a company that supports that.
And I think we have parent guilt, don't we? So parent guilt,
absolutely,
mum guilt, dad guilt. You're expected to raise your children like you don't work, and work as if you're not raising children. And we are getting better at that. And actually, COVID is undoubtedly one of the worst things that's happened, but there are positives that have come out of it. And, the legal profession in itself, I think we're quite slow to adopt change. We're probably not necessarily always at the forefront of these types of developments, but actually having been forced home working, I think it's moved a lot of firms on significantly as far as working paperlessly is concerned, and having more of a hybrid model. So that's all really positive stuff that's come out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you say, it's kind of obviously a huge amount of negative did come from it, but I think again in law, and also in, like, for example, our business is now 100% remote, and we would never have, we did consider it actually, but only on a part-time basis before we were forced to. But when we were forced to, we could see actually this massive benefits from it for everyone, and it works for everyone, so we continue doing it. So it makes sense. Okay, so, and obviously you must have many situations whereby you get a lot of joy from your work. What have been the big kind of successes that you've experienced?
It's always the little things, I think. Almost it's the clients, when you can just see the relief when you get to the end of their case. And I think because of the type of work that we do as family lawyers with clients, we get to know our clients really well often. And particularly where you've had clients that have had really difficult proceedings, and it may be that they've had to have court proceedings for finances or children, and they come to you at the beginning and they just can't see the wood for the trees. They can't see that this problem that they're in and this horrible situation that they're in is ever going to end. And for us, or for me, it's almost at the end when I can give them the decree absolute, or the final order as it's now called, and they've got their financial order, they've reached their settlement, and they know what they can do now, they know what they can move on with. And sometimes you'll just get an email or a card or something from a client, and it's that you've helped that person get from that really difficult place to where they are now, and it's just seeing the relief in their eyes most of the time. That's really great. I mean, we have domestic abuse cases and things where we manage to get injunctions and protective orders and things like that, and that's always great when you know that you've done something to really help what is an awful situation. But it's often just those little bits of just, as I say, the relief in someone's eyes when they know that they can now move on and start afresh.
As well as that, what else in law in general is it do you love about working in the career that you do? I was going to say, what is your why? But your why is different. But what is it that motivates you every day to kind of get up, go to work, and think, yes, this is who I am. This is why I do this. It may well be one and the same. It may well be the same answers you just.
Yeah, I think it is. It's just that that notion of helping people. And I don't think you can be a family lawyer unless that is your why, that you want to get up and you want to help someone. Because if you're not genuinely interested in the people and the helping the person, family law is not really for you. There are other areas of law that would be much better suited. We have, don't get me wrong, we have statutes and case law and all of that type of stuff that we have to work with, but actually it's often the negotiating and the trying to reach an agreement and the really working with parties and trying to work out exactly what the problem is, because sometimes what they present to be the problem or what they tell you they want isn't always the reality of the situation. So it's trying to unpick that. And also sometimes it's a lot of just thinking outside the box. So, you might have a client that hasn't got enough money. There may be all the applications in the world that they can make to help their situation, but they physically haven't got the money to do so. So you have to think out the box. How can I help this person? Or it may be that actually you've got a couple in front of you who have more debts than assets. So again, there's no point in racking up thousands of pounds worth of legal fees arguing about debt. So it's, how are we going to sort this out? How are we going to think outside the box? And I think it's that every day is different, because every relationship is different. So every divorce is different. We haven't got a black and white law. We look at things like fairness and reasonableness. So there's a degree of subjectivity there, which means that the answer is never 100% guaranteed. And I think it's that, that it's almost like a puzzle that you're trying to put together. Yeah.
I interviewed another guy actually who, again, you said about the 100%, nothing's 100% guaranteed, and he said that's one of the things he loves is to a degree. Obviously, it gives you that uncertainty, but again, if you're in property law, if you're something like that, what the outcome is at the end.
Yeah.
Whereas, with your job, obviously, you don't know the outcome until. And it can sometimes depend on the actual, the judge on the day, on what their decision is, because of those factors that you've just mentioned. Okay, well, looking at the kind of early part of your career, if you were to kind of speak to somebody in your position now, what sort of advice would you give to that kind of younger version of yourself, kind of starting out, being newly qualified? What would you tell them that you feel would be beneficial to their career at that stage?
I mean, definitely keep your options open. Just because you think you might like to do a certain area of law, or you think you might like to work for a certain type of law firm, it might not work. Things might change. You have to be prepared to pivot, move, try something else if not. And that's not a bad thing. I think sometimes we could get fixated on, well, I have to work in this area of law for this law firm because this is what I've expected to do for the last 6 or 7 years. And then you get there and you're like, actually, I don't really like this. Yeah. Maybe I need to go and try something else. So definitely keep open-minded, keep your options open. Don't be prepared to try something that perhaps you hadn't thought about. And, on that, get experience, try out different types of law firms, different areas of law, to see what actually fits. Because, as I found out, working in some practice areas is very different in reality to what we're taught when we're doing it on a law degree or on the LPC. And also there's so many different ways that you can qualify now. So it's not even that you have to go to university. You can do so much on the job training. And depending on the area of law that you're working in and the type of law firm that you want to go to, it's often so beneficial to just get in on the ground sometimes. So if you can't get that elusive training contract right away, or you can't get a particular position, get something, get in there, whether that's a paralegal, legal assistant, secretary role or something within the firm. Get to know everybody. That's the best way sometimes, like working your way up from the bottom, and don't be afraid to do that. That doesn't mean you failed. Actually, you will end up probably being a far better all-rounded lawyer as a result of doing it that way.
And you're making progress. That's the key, isn't it? Like you say, even if it feels like the progress is slower than you expected, it's still progress. I hear that quite a lot. The experience is so key, and it's quite often, like you say, experiencing different things, because your kind of conception of one thing might be completely different in reality when you actually experience it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Well, from if anybody would like to get in contact with you, Liza, how would they do that?
Yeah, they can Google us, Stowe Family Law. So I'm there. Email address is liza.gatrell@stowefamilylaw.co.uk. I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me on there, or alternatively I'm also on Instagram under @yourfamilysolicitor.
Excellent. Got all the socials covered there. Brilliant. Yeah. Liza, thank you very much. It's been an excellent episode. Appreciate your time, and we'll also include those details in the link here as well, underneath the episode. Brilliant. Thanks very much, Liza.
No problem. Thank you. Bye.